You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Monday, the 19th of March. Tensions mounting in Argentina on anniversary of Falklands War. Journalists set free in Libya. Government set to use Royal Mail pension money to offset credit rating downgrade. Possible privatisation of main roads in the UK. Swiss coach crash could have been caused by teacher distracting the driver. Spanish debt the highest in 20 years. Street wars in Damascus. An American teacher killed in Yemen. Thought for the day, animal welfare and nationalism. UK news. The anniversary of the Falkland Islands War is being put in place with tensions mounting on both sides. The Argentine president has gone running to the United States with allegations that Britain has sent a submarine carrying nuclear weapons to the Falklands. Argentine whinger Cristina Kirchner is showing interest in the islands now that oil and gas have been discovered in the region. Another left-wing anti-British celebrity is already trying to put their oar in, forgotten 80s singer Morrissey. Apparently Morrissey said at a concert, "The islands belong to you," at a gig in Argentina. One person added, Morrissey is forgotten in Britain and was only a success because of left-wing students buying his records. At a gig last year in Britain, Morrissey walked off the stage after being hit full on the head with a bottle of water. The journalists who were held in Libya and who were accused of spying have been set free. Gareth Montgomery Johnson and Nicholas Davis have been held by militant forces since last month. The Foreign Office has said it is pleased with the outcome. It is not known what brought forth their release. The government is set to use a £28 billion windfall into paying off the national debt by taking over the Royal Mail pension scheme. This move is primarily to calm fears of the international credit agencies, after some of which placed the UK on a negative watch this month. Our AAA status is in danger and George Osborne has been under pressure from the Tories to use this vast amount of money to fund tax breaks for businesses to stimulate growth. The proposed use of this money will not impress the Communication Workers Union, which has warned the government of asset stripping the fund, which has liabilities of £35 billion in the future. The government is taking on the scheme because it was decided Royal Mail could no longer afford the liabilities and its removal made it easier to privatise the company. This move, which could happen as early as next month, is making the CWU angry, as they are of course opposed to the privatisation of the Royal Mail. Along slightly different lines, sovereign wealth funds, pension funds and private investors could take control of the UK's main roads. These plans could be announced in a pre-budget speech by David Cameron on Monday. It is stated that he will say that "we will look into ways of getting large-scale private investments into the national roads network. Road tolls are amongst some other options." Apparently there's a huge input of private money in our roads already, and Cameron feels we should not rely on the public sector in the future at all. The AA feels this move will pave the way for more toll booths on our roads in the future. Euronews. The cause of the deaths of 22 children on a coach in Switzerland may have been caused by a teacher on the coach distracting the driver by asking him to put a DVD video into the coach's video player for the passengers to watch. Some of the children had reported on social networking sites that they had had a great time skiing on the trip just before the fatal crash. The public debt in Spain has been recorded as the highest in over 20 years. The financially troubled Spanish have had to close 24 state companies. Reports say that Spain is starting to fall the same way that Greece has. Spanish agriculture is also reportedly taking a setback with the driest winter season for more than 70 years. Oh, bring back Franco, all is forgiven. World news. A shootout has been taking place in the Syrian capital of Damascus. The fighting has started between government forces and the Syrian rebels in the Al-Mezeh district. A full casualty report has yet to come out. The Syrian authorities have put down a speech march in the capital at the weekend for fears of more fighting. A commander of the Taliban has spoken out of his doubt that the 16 Afghani civilians were killed by one American soldier alone. This incident that took place recently has angered the region when a rumour of the suspect involved in the shootings had been airlifted out of Afghanistan. He has been identified as Staff Sergeant Robert Bales, 38. Bales enlisted after 9/11 and served 3 tours in Iraq before being deployed to Afghanistan. He sustained brain injuries in Iraq and during his second deployment there had a portion of his foot removed. Just before the massacre he had seen a comrade's leg blown off. The Taliban are obviously trying to make this an American massacre, but Bales quite clearly was not fit for duty. Of course we might never know what caused this poor man to perpetrate such an act. An American teacher who was working in a school in Yemen has been killed. Security and Secret Service personnel are linking the murder with an Al-Qaeda based militant group from Yemen. The city of Taiz was the scene of the killing. Thought for the day: animal welfare. Well, I bet you're all thinking, animal welfare, what does that have to do with nationalism? Well, quite a lot really. We have policies in place to protect the domestic and farm animals in our country. I myself brought forward the anti-ritual slaughter motion at our conference 4 years ago and it was passed unanimously. We also have policies in place for the husbandry and breeding of endangered species of farm animals. We are not only going to care for our fellow countrymen but also the animal population as well. I myself am an animal fanatic. If it flies, swims, crawls, slithers or merely staggers, I am there. Even what are called creepy crawlies are fascinating to me, although earwigs do have me running to the hills, but I always avoid killing even flies. Of course my first loves are the felines, but I digress. You may well say I have failed with my own species and therefore have taken on another or many species, and you could well be right. One of the most distressing articles over the weekend was the fact that owing to the financial crisis in Greece they are being even crueler to their dogs than usual. If you have ever been to Greece you will have no doubt turned your eyes away from the starving kittens and dogs in earlier years, but now they are hanging dogs from trees and leaving them chained up to starve. This is being put down to the financial situation out there, but that is not totally true. The Greeks have never been animal-minded, and indeed not many natives of southern Europe or the Mediterranean are. In these countries human life is fairly cheap, so of course it follows that animals fare even worse. As to the Middle East and the Far East, well, words fail me, life is very cheap there and it follows on. I have lived in the Far East and visited the Middle East many times and have been lost for words as to how these people treat their working animals. In the Middle East, of course, which is mainly Muslim, dogs are unclean and are treated as such. In China, before their Olympics, police went around beating to death all dogs, whether owned or not, because they were over a certain size and, wait for it, they would interfere with the views the tourists and competitors would get of the city of Beijing. In Egypt, the last time I went, we refused to use certain horse-drawn carriages in Luxor because the poor beasts could hardly walk. Donkeys are loaded to a ridiculous degree and the owners wail when they collapse. Look after your animals, morons, and they will look after you. In France, people still eat frogs' legs, which are obtained in Morocco by Arabs cutting off the legs of live frogs and leaving the rest of the body still living on a heap. Snakes are still skinned alive in Thailand and South America to obtain snakeskin wallets, shoes and bags. Fish are still eaten carved up alive in Japan, as indeed are the partially burnt alive shrimp called modori, which means dancing shrimp. Well, I would do a little dance if I was burnt alive and eaten, I think. Wouldn't you? Cats and dogs are brutally beaten to death in China for their flesh and the fur that goes on the cheap clothes in our shops. Tiger and bear farms for the stupidest, who actually still believe in magic medicine and endless greed. The list is timeless and grim. As for shark fin soup, do not get me on that one. But these countries have their own culture, and although I find it reprehensible and disgusting, they are in their own country, and all one can do is to try and find a way of helping these people and their animals, which many hard-pressed charities do. What about our own country? Dog fighting is on the increase, as is badger baiting. Soon, with so many people from the Pakistani subcontinent, we will have bear baiting no doubt on a Saturday night without the liquor. We have always had our idiots keeping large dogs for fights, but now that has increased with the input from the African continent. Bushmeat into this country is on the increase, and the methods of obtaining it are not fit for your ears. It also widens the risk for diseases coming into the UK, foot and mouth being one of them. When you accept different cultures into your country, or indeed even if you don't, you have to accept their habits and views on animals in general, which I, my friends, do not. We have our own idiots who cage large dogs in their homes, never take them for walks or indeed feed them, then bleat loud and long if the poor beasts take a bite out of the nearest human being they can find, usually some poor child. The dog is then thankfully for it put out of its misery, but what about the owners? It is the owners who should be made to have licences and not for the dogs. Most of these people are unfit to have animals or children. They are either pig ignorant or just wicked. Actually, I do not like the term pig ignorant. Pigs are actually highly intelligent animals, and even now we are shipping them out to China to breed and eat. In fact, due to the terrible financial position most of our farmers are in, many of our own animals are shipped live to slaughter, mainly the Middle East for halal killing. The British National Party would stop this immediately and pay the farmers the right subsidies for their work, so they would not have to do this. Our horses are shipped out alive to the continent with monotonous regularity, and it isn't for riding. Due to the EU and its disastrous policies on fish, dead fish are thrown back into the sea from which they should not have been fished out of in the first place, due to quotas. A country is judged by the way it looks after the weakest members of its society, the elderly, the infirm, the challenged, its children and its animals. The British National Party would look after all these, plus the farmers and the fishermen. We need to protect our animals in our country and to make sure we do not take on third world attitudes along with the people we have to take in. It is inherent in our culture that we value animals both for companionship and work. We are mostly meat eaters, so therefore it is primary in our manifesto that we look after farmers and the way our animals are bred, kept, shipped and slaughtered. The British way is the only way in Britain. And finally, Lancashire dogs beware. Dogs in the county of Lancashire who are allowed to foul pavements, public footpaths and parks may find the law right behind them and a chemistry set. Dog foul DNA testing is on the way. Any dog mess found will have its DNA tested and kept for evidence to prosecute its owner. The move is by officials in Lancashire who have had enough of dog fouling in their county. So I will presume they will need to keep up ownership records as well. That should be fun. Do remember to keep your comments coming. They are very informative on planning my thoughts for the day. If you have something to say, you can have a voice through this programme. You have been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozar and I wish you all a very good night. British celebrity is already trying to put their oar in. Forgotten 80s singer Morrissey. Apparently Morrissey said at a concert, "The islands belong to you," at a gig in Argentina. One person added, Morrissey is forgotten in Britain and was only a success because of left-wing students buying his records. At a gig last year in Britain, Morrissey walked off the stage after being hit full on the head with a bottle of water. The journalists who were held in Libya and who were accused of spying have been set free. Gareth Montgomery Johnson and Nicholas Davis have been held by militant forces since last month. The Foreign Office has said it is pleased with the outcome. It is not known what brought forth their release. The government is set to use a £28 billion windfall into paying off the national debt by taking over the Royal Mail Pension Scheme. This move is primarily to calm fears of nationalism. UK News. The anniversary of the Falkland Islands War is being put in place with tensions mounting on both sides. The Argentine president has gone running to the United States with allegations that Britain has sent a submarine carrying nuclear weapons to the Falklands. Argentine whinger Cristina Kirchner is showing interest in the islands now that oil and gas have been discovered in the region. Another left-wing anti...
You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozar. In nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Monday the 19th of March. Tensions mounting in Argentina on anniversary of Falklands War. Journalists set free in Libya. Government set to use Royal Mail pension money to offset credit rating downgrade. Possible privatisation of main roads in the UK. Swiss coach crash could have been caused by teacher distracting the driver. Spanish debt the highest in 20 years. Street wars in Damascus. An American teacher killed in Yemen. Thought for the day, animal welfare and